Welcome to Manifest Your Quest. I am Rashi Roop Laxmi, and I'm a tarot reader, I'm an astrologer, I'm a manifestation and a performance coach. I have been working with helping people manifest their quest in their lives, helping them achieve what they want to, helping them have clarity and insight as to what is it they want to achieve, what is it that they want to accomplish, what is it that their purpose of life is, and helping them reach their goals and dreams. So today I have a very impressive guest before me. He is Vishwanath Swarup from Bharat Serums. So during this time of pandemic, when people are going through multiple issues and problems, this company has been working towards saving lives. I think this is one of those companies which is actually creating antidotes, snake antidotes, and many, many more. They are working in the field of IVF, for child care, for mothers, and they are the world leaders in creating serums, in creating vaccines. So Bharat Serum and Vaccine Limited is one of the fastest growing biopharmaceutical companies in India. For 50 years now, BSV has used the scientific resources to develop a range of biological and biotech pharmaceutical products. Today, as they have influenced patients' outcomes in therapeutic areas of women health and critical care and IUI and IVF, they have a privilege of being a partner of choice. So BSV's product portfolio includes plasma derivatives, monoclonals, fertility hormones, antifungal anesthetics, cardiovascular drugs, and equine immunoglobulins, antioxidants. In addition, BSV offers products in the area of gynecology, assisted reproductive technology, and many, many other in neurology, in nephrology, in hematology, and urology. The company provides its products to retail outlets and hospitals through distributors to various countries in India, as well as Asia Pacific, to Russian Federation, to CIS countries, to Latin America. It is among the top 10 biotech companies in India. And Vishwanath has been leading as a COO, taking care of sales, marketing, distribution, and strategizing. So let's understand more about Vishwanath and how he has led his own journey, and let's understand more about him. So I have Vishwanath Swarup with me now, and he will tell us firstly more about himself, and then maybe he will tell us, as our interview proceeds further, he will talk more about manifestation, how life has been, for every person, life is a different journey. So let's understand through Vishwanath, what has life been for him?
Sure. Thanks, Rashi. First of all, really thank you for organizing this. I'm not usually the one to come out and talk about it, so really appreciate your persistence in convincing me to do this. Now that I'm doing it, I feel I'll try to share from my past whatever I can, which can help people in any little small way. So currently on the corporate side, I am managing the business in Bharat Serums and Vaccines. We are a proud Indian biopharma company with a legacy of about 50 years. Overall, I think I've worked in different parts of healthcare. About 50% of my time has been in India, which represents emerging markets, and about 50% of my time earlier on when I started my career was in the US, more on the developed market side. Started my career in US working for Unilever in FMCG, and nothing against that. I think it's a fantastic organization. But realize healthcare, when you work in healthcare, there's a little bit more purpose to what you do. So I moved to healthcare, and then, of course, at some point in time, as we talk later, decided to move back to India, and then started working in different parts of healthcare over here. On the personal side, I'm, of course, a son and a husband and a proud father of a 12-year-old daughter. So yeah, very much a family person.
That's beautiful introducing yourself. Thank you so much, Vishwanath. And by the way, a very impressive person, guys. And let's understand what is his, journey like. Before that, I would ask him to if he can describe himself in a song or a quote. Being Indian, we all love Bollywood, and
Sure.
let's see if he has something to do about, go about it.
Yeah. So I think it's the highs and lows of life. Everybody, when you kind of look at somebody's life from a distance, looks very rosy, but everybody has their highs and lows. And I think the song that really resonates for me is the erstwhile classic of "Main Zindagi Ka Saath Nibhata Chala Gaya." Right, a lot that we do is a stroke of luck, stroke of what God wishes for you to happen. And I think it's in a journey, right? As you're going along, you're experiencing things as you go. So I think that's kind of been my journey as well. Saying things have happened, and half of the time you're reacting, and the other time you think you're acting, and trying to do something. So yeah, I think that's the song I would say is the closest, and I kind of believe is something what happens in life.
Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? I have heard here on this platform, maximum people have actually mentioned this song. "Main Zindagi Ka Saath Nibhata Chala Gaya." Somehow it resonates with this entire concept, of when you are trying to understand what is life all about. And yes, here we are discussing about manifestations of life, definitely. So if you can tell us, Vishwanath, more about how your journey up here has been like. My viewers would love to understand that.
Sure. I have a South Indian sounding name, but I'm actually from an industrial town in UP called Kanpur. I grew up there. My father still runs a business over there, and he's a second generation entrepreneur. So of course, being in the business family, you kind of get exposed to every day in and out kind of thing of how businesses operate. Of course, being a business setup, you've got a larger number of people that you interact with because he runs his office, etc. So again, my passion, and I got it from my dad quite a bit, is my love for automobiles, right? So as growing up, you always wanted to, break things apart. Now, when I look back, but in my mind, I was trying to understand at that time of how things really worked, but half of the time I couldn't put it back together. So I had a little bit of that bent of mind to really understand how things work. And I think like any young boy at that time, you always wanted to be an astronaut or a rocket scientist or something like that. But yeah, cars and automobiles were my passion. So my father, of course, encouraged me quite a bit. He still owns a 1932 model Ford, which he very proudly maintains, and I think it's a family gem, so to say.
Wow.
So I kind of worked through that. Then as things happen, since I had that bent of mind, did my engineering. Post that, I had a choice. I had a choice of, joining my father's business or trying to do something on my own. And typically in the Indian setup, when I was the only son, I had three elder sisters. I gave a lot of credit to my parents who never came out and said, here's what you need to do. They kind of just left it as my decision. So, of course, I started studying engineering, and that kind of got me started in really understanding a little bit on the analytical side, mathematical side, as well as the science behind it. So I requested my father if I could go to the US for further studies, doing my masters over there. So moved to the US like a typical Indian student. Uh, if I have to look back, I think that taught me greatest life lessons, survival. So believe you me, I landed in the US for the first time, and my both bags got lost, and I had just my carry-on baggage. Luckily, when you were going in the prep, and now of course all the information is available on internet, but I'm talking of the times where you had to wait till 9 or 10 p.m. to actually get a good dial-up internet connection. We had learned that keep all your paperwork in your carry-on baggage. Oh, sorry, the carry-on baggage, the cabin luggage, to be precise. So luckily, all my paperwork was there, so I was able to enter the country. And as like the student network, etc., my university, they helped me out, and I settled down. But landing in a strange land, a different land with nothing, literally, was quite an adventure for me. And as things that happened at that time, I was a little bit level-headed. So I actually didn't tell my parents till after the fact, a few months later, that this has happened, because I knew they couldn't do anything sitting out here other than just panic and get worried. And I didn't want that to add to the situation, to say the least. So yeah, did that, did my master's over there. Post that, I got a dream internship. Dream meaning, when you are in India, one of the key things you look forward to is a company like Unilever. So I got an internship over there, joined them as an intern. Things worked out pretty well over there. So rather than go back to school, they said, you finish your school part-time and we'll put you in a rotational leadership program. And I think that put me in a very different space, career-wise, both personal growth as well as professional growth. So I worked in very early on in plant, in a production environment. They moved me to Jefferson City, Missouri. And again, one of lifetime experience. I think it's a very small town in the US. And when we think of US, we think of New York, Manhattan, and things like those. Whereas here in a small town with a population of literally 5 people, and I was the only brown person. There was one other Pakistani couple that I could say were brown. It was an interesting thing, and I don't mean any negative thing about that. I think the US is a very, very welcoming culture, and I think yes, every culture has their own kings, right? So, but I settled down there, um, worked my way through that very early on. This is my second rotation in the rotational leadership program. Had to retrench people, had to reduce about 50-60% of the workforce who I was managing. Um, that I think was one of the toughest things that I've ever done, to actually, tell someone that they don't have a job anymore. And at that age and that maturity level, I'll be honest, half of it was just carelessness of youth. I'm not sure if I did a very good job, but it did have an impact on me, right? The board of Unilever definitely thought I did a good job because they promoted me after that. But one of the things I learned in that ordeal or that process and experience was when I used to go to bed every night. The first few times I would just think about how many jobs I am responsible for not being there, right? And one of my mentors in Unilever told me, you realize that the decisions is already made. You're executing it. And secondly, if you do a good job, two positive outcomes can happen. One, I think the people who stay back, you've secured their job for the next 10 years because the production will be that much more productive. Secondly, you have a choice to make sure the people who you are retrenching, you train them and you make sure they get other jobs. And I think there's always a silver lining. And I think very earlier on in my career, when I got people management experience, I was able to I went to bed saying, hey, I've secured this job. And I really, during the day, worked very hard to ensure that the people we were reducing their jobs had other options. And I trained them on their interviewing skills, or how they converse, etc. And for me personally, the biggest achievement there, and that is till date my toughest assignment, was that we were able to place all the employees who were reducing the jobs for in different companies, right? Secondly, I think we went through this entire reduction without any production issue or accident. So everybody who stayed back was safe and did really, really well. And I think that was in my mind a pivotal point. Of course, then I worked in my way in Unilever, then moved to healthcare at Pfizer. Post that, decided to come back to India for personal reasons as well as professional reasons. Worked in McKinsey over here. Very, very good and different experience. Post that, did a stint in health insurance to try to understand, because in India, health insurance is not something that people really buy and are even aware of. So it was, in my mind, a very underpenetrated business, which we need to really focus on. So part of that, and then post that, moved to Abbott. And I've also learned never say never, because when I was in McKinsey and I was in Max Bupa, I said I would never move to Mumbai. And, Abbott opportunity came along and it happened in Mumbai. And, they've convinced me and convinced my wife to move to Mumbai. And we moved to Mumbai. And now I think we really don't want to move out of Mumbai. And that's why I did a short stint in DRL and now ended up in Bharat Serums. So sorry, it took a long time, but I just kind of walked through and again.
No, not at all, Vishwanath. This was a beautiful experience that you actually shared with us, all about right from your childhood journey, like loving. This is, the journey which everybody is looking for. And most of an Indian, you have actually portrayed a life of basically most of Indians, this is how they actually see their lives. And and the part about your, when you retrenched people and you saw that most of them were placed, and how, I would like to know, if it is okay with you, what were you going through internally, emotionally, if it is okay with you?
Sure. It's been a long time, so I can revisit that. It's not going to open up any wounds, so to say. But I think if I break this into, signing up for that role, and, as we grow and we think deeper, harder about it, we tend to overcomplicate things. But when you're young and youthful and you feel you can do anything and change the world, that spirit makes you do a lot of things that you'd never even dreamt of. Right now, if someone with the wisdom I have today was to tell me that you do something like that, move to a very small town in the US, reduce people by about 60% in a production site, I would literally say, hey, let me come back. Let me think about it for a week. Let me talk to my wife about it, see how she feels. But when it happened, actually, I was quite young. The role was offered saying, hey, you've proved yourself to be very good analytically, very good business acumen. but we really want you to test out and learn people leadership. And because you're very young and junior in the system, the best people leadership can be in a production environment. So there's an opportunity in Jefferson City, Missouri, which is the state capital of Missouri. Why don't you move there and do this restructuring for us? And I said, instantaneously, yes, absolutely, I'll do it. So in hindsight, for this conversation, I can over intellectualize it, but I'm choosing to be honest. At that time, I didn't really think of or didn't know what I was getting into, right? When I landed there, then it started hitting me a little bit, right? And there's this whole thing about the gun culture in the US. The truck culture, right? The pickup trucks, etc. So I was the only one who had a sedan in the parking lot. Everybody else had a truck, the pickup trucks, right, as they call it. The toughest season, so I was working as a production supervisor, and my manager there told me, saying, if you really want to grow fast, work the night shift, because then you are the production manager, you're the quality manager, you're the security in charge, you're the plant manager, you're the HR manager, you've got everybody, because no other person is there from the management. And again, I was young. I said, fine, I'll do that. And I remember the first night, there's some quality issue that happened in a batch of shampoo, right? And a call had to be made to either fill that and send it to the market, or just flush it out, throw it away in a proper, not just down the drain, because you can't do that. It'll be wrong for the environment. So whatever the practical purpose was, dispose it off. And I said, let's dispose it off, because this lot is contaminated and will not be good for our customers. And I did that my first night, right? In the morning, when my shift ended and my manager was coming in and I had to give an update, of course, he had heard about, entire batch, 5,000 gallon batch of shampoo being thrown away, and it's a huge cost. So he looks at me and says, I'm very proud of you that you at least made a decision. Shows that you have the decision making capability. And he applauded that in the meeting. Then he tapped me on my shoulder and said, let's go and have breakfast. On breakfast, he told me, son, you made a wrong decision. There were ways that we could actually fix that shampoo. And I'll never say that publicly, but because these are the people you're managing, but you made a wrong decision. But I'm very happy you were bold enough to make a decision, right? And that gave me a sense of, reassurance that, making decisions is very, very important. And at times we over intellectualize. I was wrong and I still am. And then this whole, exercise started where we had to select people. When you do that in this kind of an environment, right, one of the biggest things that becomes an issue is safety, right? If again, and you're dealing with all sorts of employees, right? If there is a disgruntled employee, all they have to do is put a finger in a machine and then claim a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, right? And then so that's how they can secure the future. So we said, let's connect with our employees, our team, in an emotional way, right? How do we tap into the good human being in them? And so we did a whole host of things, but two things I would say. One, I think when we were going through the employee selection process, we were very transparent. We rated them very, very clearly. This is the rating, etc. Secondly, we did, and I personally drove that, is very proactive outplacement. So they saw, and again, it's not the outplacement I'm talking about, but the intent. Once we made it clear to them that this is for the benefit of the plant, and we are committed to making sure that they have jobs after this, they saw that the intent is right. And the last thing we did is, we used to do a 5-minute safety talk before the start of the shift. That was typically a checkbox exercise, right? Somebody from their the line only would talk about it, and that's it. But we said, why doesn't one of the employees get their child uh, and come and talk about safety in the plant, right? Now, imagine a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old coming, because there was an age limit, we couldn't get people below that age within the plant premises, coming and delivering that safety stock, right? And talking about saying, hey, mom, hey, dad, be safe. I'm going to be waiting for you at home. That emotional piece, I think, struck a chord with the people, and we were able to maintain a safe environment. So again, the learnings, if I have to summarize, is you have to take at times decisions. Decisions can be wrong. The important thing is the intent has to be right? And if you have the right intent, the
Correct.
system sees you through, right?
Absolutely. And
the other, yeah.
Actually, the intent needs to be on
Absolutely.
the right track. Correct.
Absolutely.
Carry on. Please carry on.
Yeah, and the other thing, like I said, is how do you actually connect at an emotional level, really understand? We tend to, as Indians specifically, I'm not knocking ourselves, but we are trained to think, and we are very good on our IQ, right? But on our EQ side, it's something that is not a thing that is taught in school. Mm-hmm. That is something that we have to learn as we go. And I think balancing that out, making those decisions with your IQ, but making sure when it comes to implementation, you have the right EQ side to balance it out is absolutely very, very important. And that's the balance I think we were able to achieve in this situation.
That's very interesting. In fact, Vishwanath, I think you achieved something, and which very few will be able to achieve. That's why you were able to, have that kind of position. That was wonderful, in fact. So now shifting to the topic of generally. So since you are into the healthcare sector, so what is it in your life that you find very interesting, very enriching with respect to your life and your work, everything?
Sure. So two, three elements, right? One, I think, is like I said, I started at Unilever, an FMCG company, right? Which again, nothing wrong, very respectful of that organization. But then you started thinking about saying, hey, is that what life is all about? Or can you do something more to positively impact more people around you, right? And that's where I chose to move to healthcare. And that was the trigger point for me to do something more substantive, create more impact. One of my organizations, Pfizer, right? There was a session as part of the induction where they would have letters from patients and how the medicines that Pfizer marketed helped them overcome pain or live a better life, etc. And then you would read that, and that I think gave you a sense of purpose, saying this, of course, it's a for-profit business. There's nothing to shy away from that. But beyond that, there is something more, right? And so I think what I thought of initially, I was able to experience that at least in the induction time, and then be able to practice that while I was there. One of the things that we used to sell is painkillers. Now you could say that's just simple pill popping, but when you go through your own pain and you have a pill to relieve you of that pain, it matters, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's different things that kind of come up. I think of late, we are all dealing with this pandemic, which hopefully will soon become an endemic. When wave 2 struck, one of our products, I'm sure you would have heard of black fungus or mucor, that was very, very widespread.
Yes.
And we were one of the largest manufacturers of that product in India, and for India, right? And so.
And what was that product?
So it's liposomal amphotericin B. Our brand name is Amphonex.
Okay.
Right? And that treats black fungus. It's an antifungal.
People were dying because of this black fungus. They were getting cured out of COVID, but they were dying with this black fungus, and they were literally, people were looking out for medicines for this.
Sure.
I'm sure you must be feeling so relieved, that you are actually making people live more, and it definitely must have given you a boost on that.
Yeah, and I think it was just not me, to be honest, is when this started surfacing. We pulled together our production team, our supply chain team, our sales team, etc., saying how our distribution team, our government affairs team, because the government was really came in and said, we want each and every vial that you make, and we will tell you where to send it. So yeah, in hindsight, it sounds very noble, and it is noble. But during that time, we were literally under the gun in terms of how much we can produce, how quickly can we get it to market without compromise either production or safety or quality standards. And that was, and phone ringing till 3 a.m. in the morning, somebody going for, and you could see, of course, people will float the phone numbers, right? The first call will be a request. The same person calls again, it's a harder request. Then it turns into a plea, and then they break down. And then if they are highly placed or connected, then it turns out to be a threat, right? So you're dealing with all those things at that same point in time. And not just me, my entire team. I think it was really, really difficult for us. But again, whatever little sleep we got during that time was one of the best, most peaceful times in our mind, and made us very, very happy and proud of what we do. It has never felt so noble a profession as it felt during that time. Having said that, I don't want us or the community or the country to experience that again. But during that time, the impact of what you do was so much visible and out there. It was an incredible experience that I think hopefully happens once in a lifetime, and it's enough for once in a lifetime for somebody to see that.
Absolutely, I'm very sure. And not only you, I've heard many people talk about like remdesivir hair or something. And if this is a life-saving drug, then and you're providing it to them, then definitely you will be getting it from all ends, from maybe political angle, from different levels altogether, from the police, from this and that. I can totally understand, because when one is in need, they take all the routes to actually get it. So that definitely there is that part to it, definitely. So now coming to manifestation, since I am a manifestation coach, and first I would like to know, like, do you believe in manifestation, yes or no?
So I think when I started, we had that conversation, I kind of reflected back. I think I never articulated it as manifestation, right? Like I said, the song as well, I talked about saying, hey, you're just kind of going through the journey of life. But, I guess the way I view manifestation, or a version of that is, at times you have a very broad view of what you want to achieve. But then you also realize things will never plan out or pan out the way that you exactly want them to. However, if you adapt, there's always a silver lining, and there's a bigger prize waiting for you on the other side. So you have to go with the flow, and what you want, you will get, and it'll kind of show up. But it may look a little differently initially, but once you start experiencing it, then you say, haha, it's essentially what I wanted to achieve, right? I mean, in my case, very earlier on, I started managing a large team, and that was one of the very satisfying experience for me, that how you could impact so many people's life in a positive way. And that's what I continue to build on. So even today, that's one of the things I take a lot of interest, and hopefully I'm halfway decent for my team. to help them achieve their potential, right? And I think that's something that's kind of worked out for me.
That's beautiful, in fact. So, if I can ask you with respect to your childhood, so was there something as a child which you have thought very specifically that I would like to manifest, or mujhe ye chahiye, or this dream, which you felt that, okay, this is something I dreamt as a child, and yes, it has come true. I'm talking about very small incidences, maybe, something which has rectified or something.
Yeah, so it wasn't anything material. Yeah, I mean, at times you think of, as a kid, your mind can go anywhere. But I think it was, and again, your upbringing and your environment always has a huge impact on your frame of reference and how you think about things, right? And so we were a family of six. I had three elder sisters. We tight knit family. Credit to my mother and my father for that. And so I always wanted to have a family that we kind of have, just whatever happens, we would have dinner together. And my father would, of course, in business, you can understand there'll be highs and lows, right? But the way he would be able to shut shop in his mind and spend time with us, in his mind, it was very little time, but that kind of was something that I always wanted to do, right? Saying, how do you prioritize family when you have work and social pressures? And I think I'm not sure I'm there yet, but I think I'm getting better at it as I go. As I grew up, I think, like I said, in the stint of people leadership, I wanted to start managing more and more people. I felt better about it, and I thought I was getting better at it as I go. And I think life has given me. I've been lucky enough to get that opportunity as well. Other than that, I think just spending time with family, etc. Very basic things is what I kind of envisioned myself, and that's where God's been kind with that for me.
That's very beautiful, in fact, and so nice to, when you are that way, the people around you also somehow, when you are a leader who craves to have, a family, I want to spend time with my family, then what happens is you are actually leading the way. And there are so many other families, you are actually making them also, giving them that kind of path too as a leader. That definitely, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Sure.
And so tell me, I know that you have manifested a lot in your life, and since you have been thinking that you want a life in a particular manner. So if you can give us other examples also, like you went to your college, and I understand that you were in like you told us, your engineering college, and then you were in the US. So was it like you had dreamt that I want to go abroad, I want to study there, and you manifested it, and or maybe like I'll tell you what, like when I was a kid, I always dreamt that I'm going to go to a place, like there is one in there is a rail exhibition or something, railway exhibition there in Delhi. And I wanted to see something very similar in, the planes one. And I had a chance in US, and I was thinking, yes, this is something that I dreamt, and I have done it. Okay, it happened. So what happens is, this is what I want to understand. Like when we are thinking something in your, like it is there, and we automatically go towards it. We do not know that we are actually going towards it. So I would like to know, have you, for my viewers, I'm actually, figuring it out from you, like, is there something which you have wanted?
Course, as a young engineer at that time, and there were not many major job opportunities, etc. in India, I always wanted to do something of my own, right? And being the only son, you carry this thing of bigda bacha hoga and all that kind of thing. So I wanted to prove that, and that's where when I moved finished my engineering, I said, let me, if I stay in India, that my father's aura would be kind of something all over. And that's why I chose to go outside and literally kind of start working on my own. And that was one of the biggest things for me, saying to be able to establish myself from zero and do something without the backing of my family as much, right? Of course, they were there and fully supportive, but I think that's one of the things. Of course, then the second one was, getting married and my wife, etc. When we had a chat, of course, that became a little bit of, I wanted to always do, get to know her and all, and we ended up doing that. And then after that, it was about two two incidences that we talk about it. One is major, one is trivial. Is going out as a family for a holiday, right? With my parents. So they had come to the US, and I always dreamt of when would, because it was always my father taking us out, right? Now this was an opportunity for me to take my parents out for a holiday. So of course they came there and we booked a nice place next to a river. We went to Smoky Mountains, and in my mind that still is one of the best holidays I've ever been to, because my parents were there and my wife, etc., and we were just all together, and that I think was a dream come true, so to say. The other one is a trivial one, but growing up, you used to always get these audio cassettes of, Amitabh Bachchan shows that he would go to the Wembley Stadium or something of that sort and perform there. And I was a diehard. I am a diehard Amitabh Bachchan fan. So we were in Chicago, and there was a show announced that Amitabh Bachchan is coming to town. And I told my wife, come what may, we are going for this and we're buying the best tickets in the house. Right. So she mellowed me down, and she does sort me out, because I tend to overcomplicate things. So she just sets me right. She said, we are going there, but not the most expensive tickets because you haven't seen the price tags. But we went there and we saw Amitabh Bachchan perform live. I think that was a dream come true for me. Again, in the similar lines, big time Sachin Tendulkar fan, right? So me, my wife, and my daughter went for a holiday in for Europe, and we ended up in London. And of course, we wanted to go to Lords because I'm a cricket fan, etc. And they give you a tour over there. So we were going through that, and I was just chirpy, right? I was asking him so many questions, etc. The guide who was taking us around. And he knew I was Indian. And of course, if you're Indian, you love Sachin Tendulkar. So we went to the visitors' dressing room, right? And this is beyond manifestation. I didn't even dream I'll get a chance to do this. And he says, you, points to me and says, you sit there. And he shows me one of the places where right next to the exit to the balcony. So I sit there, I don't know. And then he goes around and says, cricketers are very superstitious. They'll follow the same kind of routine that they follow. And one of the things is he says, you know what, who used to sit over there always? And I said, I don't know. He says, Sachin Tendulkar, right? And so I was sitting at the same place as Sachin. I just literally held the seat and I had a lump in my throat. And both me and my daughter looking at me like, what's happening to this? Do we know him? That kind of a look, right? So it's one of the things. And then imagining Kapil holding the Prudential Cup from that balcony, which is outside. I think these are all dreams. I'd watched it on TV. I was very, very young. So I saw recordings probably to get it really in my head. But that happened, right? So of course there's this fan following moment, the star kind of thing. But I think the bigger, more relevant piece is, that outing with family. I think that was one of the things I always wanted to do. Even today, I think I'm always after my parents if they can come here, and then we'll go out for a family outing. It's something that always kind of keeps happening. We celebrated my dad's 75th birthday. We were able to get all the family together and go out to Lonavala. and then spend time there. I think these are things where it kind of very simple things, but I think are very
I'm
important
sure,
things.
but this is something which, it actually, these are the memories you want to live with, right? Not only that, it's like, are you able to pull your parents after all? Because they are, as they grow older, they are more fixed in
Yeah,
their brains. I'm not going to move from there. You are going to take me to 10 places. I
yeah,
won't be.
yeah,
Are you able to? It is also a fact, to get them moved from where they are to.
yeah, yeah. So my father and I don't want my mom, I'm sure, is going to react to this, but my father is pretty flexible, right? He'll be like, whatever, it's fine. He'll come along. My mom needs some convincing. She's, of course, dealing with a lot of health issues as well. And she was in her youth and even before these health issues, her spirit is something that always was very, like, always there, right? So it's uh, difficult for us to come to terms with that, where my mom's kind of saying, hey, no, let's not do this. But if you were able to push her and convince her, she's really fun to be with. So
So
the
she was the
last one, I
one
think,
always
yeah,
energetic and all
yeah,
enthusiastic about. Mhm.
exactly. So about 3 years ago was the last family outing that we did. This is before the pandemic, where it was my father's 75th birthday. We were able to, all my sisters had come, and literally we went down and we went to Shilim and spent about a weekend over there. And just we did nothing, just spent time, pulled each other's legs, and had lots of food and drinks, and that's it. So it was just getting back together with your siblings, with your parents. It just recharges you like nothing else.
Very true. Very true. In fact, I can totally relate to it. Coming from a joint family background. So
Sure.
where so so tell me, I would like to know with regard to your work, with regard to your own manifestation, and how you have seen yourself as a child, that you would want to become something, an epitome of a person that you have defined for yourself. So
Sure.
I would like to know, has persistence really played a role there in your success in your life?
Sure. So one of the things, right? Like I said, you are a function of how you've been brought up, what you've seen in life, right? And I strongly believe that, right? So why did this whole thing of, managing people, etc., managing teams come through? Because my father was managing a business, and I could see him managing a lot of people, and he did it really, really well. And I think that's what I carried in subconsciously in my head, and then eventually I've been lucky enough for that to get manifested. I think the other piece around, the work angle, I think it's always about how you create some positive impact. Everybody wants to make a decent living, but how do you make something more out of it? And I think that's not easy, right? At times you have to be very persistent. So while when I was going through my journey, I kind of glossed over. It wasn't easy, right? Going there in a different country, establishing yourself, uh, and then choosing to come back. Um, and when you do that, you always have to take a step back a little bit. Now, of course, as they say, the world is getting flatter and flat by the day. But when I came back, I joined McKinsey here. I was lucky enough to get in, etc. But the work culture here is very different than what I was used to in the US, right? There's hardly any lines drawn between personal and professional and personal space, right? Whereas I was used to summer Fridays, where on Fridays during summertime, you would go home after lunch and that's it. You come back to work on Monday and nobody would bother you between that time and Monday morning, right? So that, again, getting accustomed to that, and getting used to that, I give a lot of credit to my wife and my, at that time, very young daughter, how she helped me go through that, because uh, we both were used to that lifestyle. And we said, now if he's chosen to come back, we have to live by the rules and how life is over here. You can't live in an artificial bubble. And that took away a lot of personal time from what we were used to. And she kind of adapted to it. For me, it was difficult. And that's where, I just kept at it, saying, okay, we find a way, etc., and kept at it. And I think doing McKinsey, and after that saying, really, I've done what I wanted to do in the consulting. Now let me go out and start managing teams, what I really like. The first question that used to be asked is, have you managed large teams? Yes. Answer was, but have you done that in India? Like, no. Oh, well, India is very different, right? So yeah, I had to literally overcome that, prove myself. And the only way you could do that and survive and be successful is be persistent about it, right? You go back, you do your homework. Fortunately, even in US, they're human beings. And in India, they're human beings, right? So intrinsic behavior is the same. The emotional quotient or the emotional connect has to be the same. But again, I had to literally prove myself uh, again to get established in the Indian market, right? So while the overall journey sounds very fancy and, okay, 10 years there and then moving back here, the shift from the US to India wasn't easy. Um, and that's where I think, your persistence, your tenacity gets tested, and saying, really, do you have it in you to keep going at it? Because everybody, and when I say this, I don't mean ill about anybody who questioned me on that, right? Because that's a journey you have to undertake, right? India is different. Any market is different, right? But as you grow older, you tend to understand that. But you're young, the risk they run is you'll be brash or whatever. You'll not understand the nuances of that, and that will be a disaster for your career as well as the organization, right? So there's a limited risk that they take, and then you prove yourself. They'll give you a little bit more, and that's where you have to be very, very persistent in what you're doing and keep going at it.
So I would like to ask you here. So what is that clarity moment, or maybe the moment of transformation when you understood that there are people who would actually question what you are trying to do? So what was the moment, or maybe what was that moment of understanding that yes, for you, or maybe a moment of eureka moment?
Yeah. So I can't say it was one moment. It was a little bit of when we decided to move back, right? And I started looking for opportunities coming back. Again, the option was we could and go back to Kanpur and manage my father's business. But really, when you started talking to headhunters, and they would talk about saying, oh, okay, so is that the job? You want to move back to India? And they would offer you a job which is at least 2 notches below of what you were doing in the US. And I'm not talking about pay scales, right? Pay scales are very different, but the kind of job you were doing. And so that's when it would hit you saying, hey, if going back would put you back in your professional path, while personally it will be very good, how do you balance that out? Right. And I think, like it or not, I did take going back a little bit, right? Because that's something that I had to go through. But I think with persistent, it's a little bit of a rubber band effect which happens. You take a step back, and if you're really persistent, you propel yourself into a different level. If you go through it and touch wood, being successful about it, and be lucky about having the luck on your side, and with all God's grace, then you end up on the right side. And I think that's been the journey so far.
So how were you able to reinvent yourself all through your journey of handling people? Because what I understand is everything is fine, but one of the most difficult things is handling people, and that's what you have been doing as a leader. Yeah. Like you need to keep reinventing yourself, and so a bit more to my viewers, how do you do that?
Sure. So I think first you have to understand your audience, right? And why I say that is when I was in a production environment, I was working with semi-skilled people, right? And their emotional, uh, so to say, quotient or emotional connect has to be very, very high. And it's nothing against semi-skilled or anything, but they're very high on emotion. And in a small town culture, the American small towns are no different than our small towns. The value system, neighbor commenting on how you living your life, etc. Those kinds of things are there as well. So how do you then, and when you're talking about job losses, how do you position it? How do you make it more palatable for them? Whereas in McKinsey, we used to say you're always working with, very high aspiration, high skill, insecure overachievers, right? And you never had to ask people to do anything, right? Because they would already have done it, or they would have thought 2 steps ahead of it. So the challenge there the challenge was to connect emotionally. Here, the challenge was how do you keep that piece of intellectual, not one man upmanship, but staying abreast intellectually in the discussion and taking them along and channeling it in the right direction, right? So the need there, because the audience was different, was here that, right? In a typical environment that I work in now, right? You've got very skilled people, experienced people. It's important to give them the due respect of what they have accomplished so far in their life, and then channel them and get them working in one direction of what the overall organization priority is. And I think that's I'm sure I'm only 50% of where I need to be, but the idea is not to achieve 100%. The idea is to continue to get better at it. And I think
Brilliant.
that's how I approach it, saying, some things that, I learned, saying, okay, and again, this is all hindsight, right? In hindsight, you'll always sound very, very smart. When you're dealing with it, then it's all, all over the place. So, like now I can critique and saying it was really the emotional piece that worked in that situation. It was the intellectual piece that works in the McKinsey kind of environment, and in typical line role when you're dealing with very senior people, very seasoned people. It's more, again, a mix of both, giving them the due respect, making sure intellectually they're challenged, bringing them along emotionally.
Absolutely. Isn't it brilliant? The way you need to understand your audience and then dealing with it. Actually, it's quite extraordinary. This needs extraordinary skills, and you have adapted to that part. That's simply brilliant. And coming to the last part of my interview, I will not take a lot of your time. Just quickly, I want to ask you, or maybe you can tell my viewers, if when life, we are in the midst of pandemic, so maybe perhaps endemic now, but yet there are many people, there are a lot of people who are hoping for the good, yet there are a lot of people who have gone through so many challenges that there's a lot of anxiety brewing up, there is a lot of anxious people, do not know what is going to happen. So during this time, when life is throwing all kind of lemons, people say that let's make lemonade. Is it easy to make lemonade, or is it like, how do you, that curveball, how do you see it, and how do you ask people to take it up, that difficult times? What is the perspective that you give it to my viewers?
I mean, the cliche is that, with every challenge comes an opportunity, right? I think I can share what works for me. I don't think I'm equipped enough to tell what people need to do. But what works for me is really when you're in the heat of moment, right? I also changed jobs in the middle of pandemic when it had just started. You've got things coming in, especially we were going through a transformation. You've got things coming at you at 1,000 miles an hour, and you don't know what to do. You're just responding, right? And I think what's very, very important there in my situation is to say mentally, if you shut yourself down for a little while, get away from the situation and give yourself some time to think about what's really at play over here and where is the opportunity, right? We all can spend, let's say, 1,000 hours talking about the problems that we have. But if we are able to carve out 15 minutes to say, in all these problems, where is the opportunity? And that you will not be able to do, at least I'm not able to do in the heat of the moment, because then you're just reacting. So I think it's very important to be able to put things in a compartment and saying, I typically do it in the morning or late at night when me and my wife are just having a chat. And I give her a lot of credit because she'll say something and just I'm like, that's so simple. That's so the right way to look at it, but I couldn't have thought of it. So she just cuts through the crap like anything, right? So of course, having somebody you can talk to is very, very important. But outside of that, if you don't have that luxury, uh, then give yourself a break. Uh, Step away, not just from your desk or your laptop, but literally the situation I'm talking about, and think through. Okay, if all this is happening, where is the opportunity, and what do I need to then do that? The second thing is to back yourself, right? And we talked about persistence earlier. Uh, you know, all these startups, right, which unicorns, etc., that you see, is a function of all the problems that exist. If problems didn't happen, these businesses wouldn't have become unicorns. So again, to reiterate the fact that with every challenge comes an opportunity, right?
Opportunity. That's beautiful.
It's happening in front of our eyes, right? Nobody could have imagined that Google Pay or these digital payments would take off the way they did, right? And I think that's, you have to take a step back and saying, where is the opportunity? What do I need to do? And then back yourself for that. Be persistent about it. Be steadfast about it, and things will happen. Um, Pandemic or not, I tell this to my team, right? And of course, on the commercial side, last financial year, because of pandemic, lockdowns, etc., and we were going through a transformation. I said, let's be clear one thing, right? This year, the challenge is COVID, but next year there will be another challenge, and of course, there was wave two. Now, as we are getting into next year, I'm sure there'll be a challenge this year as well. But it is about taking a step back and saying, if this is the challenge, where is the opportunity? What can I do about it? And then backing yourself to do that and being persistent about it. I think once you do that, it kind of, uh, you know, God has and life has a funny way of working itself out, and it does. It just tests you to say, do you have the persistence, and do you have the courage to go through it? And that's what you need to focus on.
It's beautiful, I must say. And this is something which I would like to, ask my viewers to watch this particular part, especially very beautifully said, in fact. And now there are a few things I would like to ask very quickly, like what is the favorite book that you read all the time and would give my viewers a run?
So I'm first of all, I'm not an avid reader, but of course, very early on, I read Jack Welch's first book, Straight from the Gut. I used to think he's like the way he's built up GE and how the culture that he set up. I think that's till date the favorite book, most favorite.
Straight from the gun.
Straight from the gut.
Straight from the gut. Okay.
Straight from the gut. Yeah.
That's awesome. Let me also read this book. Let me just check it out. So if you can tell us, what is the routine that you follow? That actually, it is said that Tony Robbins, that is, we consider as a life coach, I follow him. So he talks about getting up in the morning, priming yourself up, and getting into a routine, which will set a tone for the day. So do you follow such routine? And
so I follow the routine to a fault, and my wife doesn't like that. I'll always do the same thing, right? Now you can call me superstitious as well, but I think it tunes my mind in a certain way. So I'll always get up, of course, come and fold my hands in front of the puja that we have over here. Um, my daughter would be either sleeping at that time, give her a look, or if she's awake, tease her a little bit, get some, funny things going and build up the energy. And then, one of the things I always do is we have the luxury of a balcony overlooking the RA. Just go out there and just be myself, right? And just say, okay, a recap of yesterday, what happened, what are the 2-3 things that are relevant and are important, and what am I trying to accomplish today. And this is not just professionally, but personally as well, right? And especially during these times, I would kind of look back and think about saying how many people have called me from my family or extended family, either dealing with COVID or anything like that, any situation. And so first things I will do is, of course, get in the car, call my parents, how they're doing, checking in on that, check in on my father-in-law, and then call those people who might have reached out to me the day before or something and check in on, and then kind of the day kind of takes over after that.
Beautiful, wonderful, wonderful. And last question, what is it that you like doing a lot that keeps you at a pace ahead? Maybe something which you feel that this is something which will keep me, happy, and I will be my best at, one thing.
I think that one thing is continuing to challenge yourself to do newer things which you think are very, very risky, can burn your career or something. And you have that, or at least I have that luxury, because when I come back home, I'm able to just rewind and shut everything off and spend time with my daughter and wife. And they bring a very different, texture to my life. And that refreshes me and rejuvenates me. So the next day that I'm going in, I'm going all guns blazing kind of thing. So that, again, being very clear and then hitting that reset button every night, thanks to my wife and daughter, very, very helpful. I think that support system is always understated. But the value that they add is just significant, both personally and professionally.
That's beautiful. This brings us to the end of my interview. And thank you so much, Vishwanath. Your little statements, each and every one of them has really added, I'm sure they have added so much of value to my viewers here. And we do not realize it, but very little things actually add up to that manifestation and to that success. So you have actually given us a lot. And thank you so much for that, giving your time, all this energy, your giveaways to all my viewers, those little joys of, those spices that you have added with your stories. It's awesome. And thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for organizing this. Really appreciate it. And you continue to do great work. I think a lot of people look up to you, and especially during these difficult times of the pandemic, I think you bring in a breath of fresh air, very clear, lot of hope. And I can't agree more with you saying, this element is very, very important, and thanks for doing that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and really appreciate for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this way we come to the end of the interview. And thank you so much for listening to this interview with Vishwanath Swarup. So we saw how he manifested through his patience, persistence, and the way he reinvented himself. Not only that, seeing opportunities when life throws unprecedented scenarios at you. So that is also very important. We have understood that. So guys, let's come together again and do share, do like, do subscribe to this channel, Manifest Your Quest. And I am very soon coming up with various techniques, just talking about the techniques of how to manifest your quest in life. So be here, keep coming back, and try out these techniques that is shared by the people who have seen the best of how to deal with life, and they have been successful in all their endeavors. So why don't you follow these, and you might find that these techniques are actually working for you as well. So let me now share with you that manifest your quest. Manifestation of your dreams is not all that difficult. I'll be coming very soon with small videos on manifestation techniques. Thank you so much. Keep coming back, guys. Bye-bye.